Hello everyone and welcome back to the Winter Data Meetup. I hope you all enjoyed the insightful talks and discussions we had so far. Meet Mark, a lead solution architect known for his experience in data processing. Mark will delve into dynamic evolution from traditional batch to cutting-edge streaming architectures. Join us for insights from real-time data streaming and the future of data analytics, guided by Mark's expertise in the field. Now, before we dive into our session, I'd like to take a moment to ask you for your support in helping us grow in our community and recognize the speakers. Firstly, if you are enjoying the content we are providing and want to stay updated on future events and talks, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons below this video. Now for something a bit special. In the video link description below, you will find a link to the talk page where you can provide your feedback to this talk, give speaker a badge, and rate the session if you like or if you don't like. Also there, you can ask your questions for the speaker. Through the talk, if you have any burning questions or insights you'd like to share, don't hesitate to type them into the chat box on YouTube or via community platform. Our team will be monitoring the chat closely and will collect all the questions to discuss with the speaker after the presentation. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our speaker to share his valuable insights with us. Mark, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alex. Shouts out to the community, really, and all the great efforts that you're putting in there. Much appreciated. And hello, everyone. Thank you very much also for joining us today and giving the time. Much appreciated. So my name is Mark Makary. I'm the Fast Data Service Offering within EPAM Data Analytics Practice Lead. It's a center of excellence focusing on data streaming, event streaming ecosystem. And we cover almost everything that within that space. We look after thought leadership, reference architecture, solutioning, engineering, delivery, R&D, governance, guidance, and adoptions for the platform. And I think that we are blessed in a way that we run into a lot of use cases on the event streamings and AI and GenAI and integration, real-time integration, and happy to share some of this experience with you today. So thank you very much. Basically, we have content, short content today, not a lot of slides for about 30 minutes or so, and then we have a quick demo after, and then we are going to run into the Q&A. So what are you getting of the session today? It's something that I usually like to start with. There is a lot of hype in there that's surrounding the use of data streaming pipelines, and sometimes even instead of batch. And traditionally, when that comes up, we have a camp that we're very much used to use the data streaming and real-time data streams or near real-time data streams in real-time analytics. So we are used to use it for oil and gas and IoT, telecom, in financial, for instance, for fraud detections and such. So the question usually come as that, okay, if do you have a real-time use case? And the answer, if the answer is no, then okay, then why you are using real-time data pipelines or real-time streaming? And it's not really about that using one over another all the time. It's about using the right tool for the right job, and to be able to to see how and why we can, and we need to look at the full picture and be able to look at the full picture. The technique that we're using today, that we are going to go back in time a little bit and look into how the requirements evolved and how we adapted to these new requirements, and how the world of event streaming changed around us, and think that will help us a little bit with understanding the why and the how and selecting the right tool for the right job. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the future and what's in the store when it comes to event streaming and the use of event streaming and data streaming pipelines within the requirements that coming our way in the near future. So it's really difficult to illustrate and explain without having a use case in place. So the use case that I picked up today is something that very common, is not lending to the use cases that we talked about earlier, for the event streaming, like again, the IoT or similar. It's a traditional use case that we have on like e-commerce or commercial sides, or with health and retail and all the other industries in there, that on order management and order fulfillment. And typically within this space, there's a lot of operational aspects, and also there is a lot of analytical aspects to it. So if you think about the analytics aspects, that I picked up two dimensions that actually would provide powerful insights to the business in that space, just for basics ones, also for demo purposes. So if you think that the business would like to get insights on the sweet spots for the prices, so you would have aggregates on the product prices. They also like to get sweet spot on the locations. So we have aggregates on the product and the location, and we can definitely have more dimensions on top of that. But those are the two that I picked up in today to illustrate the case. So traditionally, we would have the data pipeline that going from one on the operational side, to the OLAP and the analytical side, to be able to come up with those insights. So if go back in the past a little bit, maybe 2012 and up, what was happening in there, going up on that time, the focus and the center stage really of the data analytics is big data and business intelligence and the BI. And on the event stream side, we just started, and we actually we were using it more and more for microservices architecture, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So the traditional ETL reference architecture in there that you would have in there, we have our applications producing data, coming to the operational tables. We have an ETL process that's running on Python or vendor product. We actually take the data from the operational side, we read and we transform, we flatten or denormalize, and so it'd be ready for slice and dice, and we pass it to the data warehouse and the OLAP environment and store it in there. And based on that, we run our aggregates for the insights. So very typical way of doing things in the past. Now, if you look at what's happening on the event streaming world, and on the other hand, so that was really evolution in the event-driven architecture space. We are doing look appending and Jordan style, which is really focusing on high performance and availability and resilience. The read operation is not a destructive operation anymore, so it's not just read once, but also that you can have multiple consumers reading the same message, and also you can replay the same message for the same consumers. We actually encourage it, resilience through distributed computing, vertical and horizontal. And we had a full isolation between the consumer and the brokers carrying those messages or events. So we are using a pool model. Anything that happened to the consumer, then there is no direct impact on the broker, and the broker doesn't need to keep track of all the consumers attached to it in a push model. So it really made a great difference for the operational world, that on microservice architecture and reactive architecture realms. Having said that, there's still some hurdles when it comes to adapting this for analytics purposes, especially if there is no need for real-time analytics, as we talked about before. So if you if you think about it in terms of the license models that we had for the event streaming platform at the time, it's really expensive, um, costly in the million space or similar. We have limited options when it comes to the ecosystem surrounding it, and the connection to that world is not easy to craft solutions around it. We also had difficulty um, to get the scalability right. We used to do over provisioning in there, and this is also costly, as I mentioned before. It's a complex in terms of configuration. So there's a lot of configuration that you need to do on the broker side, and at that time, that for instance, that the management aspects of it, and the producers and the consumers, and usually that in the data also that we like to use boilerplates and libraries to build our pipelines, and that wasn't in there. And an important aspect on the governance side. So you would like to have well-defined, for instance, data sets. Those data sets are reusable, and you would have the metadata for it. And I think the messages in a way at that time that weren't in that space yet. And we actually, in terms of the learning curve, we had, I would say, limited pool of practitioners in there. The barrier to entry was a little bit high, and it wasn't easy to find people that can help you with this endeavor. So we end up with keeping event streaming to the real-time analytics niche that we talked about before, and we didn't really use it for mainstream data pipelines. So we had one camp, as you can see on in here, that is actually using uh, the event streaming or event-driven architecture on the microservices side, really in using operational tables to manage their operational aspects. And then we had the uh, analytics world that pulling from the operational tables, traditionally using ETL, as we talked about it before. And that ETL process that we talked about, that using the Python or the vendor applications or tools, pull the data from the operational table, um, do the transformation on the fly, and usually go and store the outcome on the OLAP side. And that's where we pull the price and the location insights that we were talking about before. So that been going on for some time, and I think that many of us that have used this. Now, fast forward comes to the present era that we are in right now. A lot of things that actually change it on the requirement side. So the global nature of running a business really shortened the time frame that where we can go and run those batch ETLs. As you all know, that it's not anything that where we have a window overnight, because our overnight definition changed, and where we can have like 6-7 hours to run our batches. That's not the case anymore. So that shortened the batch processing window that we have for preparing the data, or even opening connection to those operational DBs and pulling data from it. The number, of course, of apps and applications, and the complexity surrounding those applications that significantly increased, the data volume significantly increased. Um, Now we have a lot of interaction between our applications and two-way um, operational analytics, operational going on in there, because we're also using the insights on the operations side. And that propagation of data and the complexity of it, it changed the world for us. Even data freshness, when it comes to the requirement that we used to do things on quarterly basis, or every 3 months or every month, now we find the insights window and time requirements that's getting closer and closer. So that means that we are going to more extensive and frequent runs of the point-to-point integration and the batches, that way more than we were doing before. And that actually brings the question that, can we find ways to avoid running long processes on the operational database, pulling data out of it. So that actually led us right now, as you know, to the Lakehouse Medallion architecture. This is, architecture now is really um, becoming more and more popular, especially that in the cloud, and that we have the tools and the capabilities that we have in there right now that allowing us to do more sophisticated operations on the OLAP side. So we thought, as a community, we thought about it. Okay, so I want to minimize the time that I'm spending that reading from the operational table. So we'd keep the operational DBAs happy and the product owner on the operational side happy, and because they're always going to have this concern that with open connection and sharing their operational DBs, running long queries or something like that is going to kill our DBs, and they if are running with mission critical or similar, that will have a major concern with that. So instead of really that we do ETL processing here, what we end up doing that we are copying raw data and placing it on what we call bronze uh, storage, and then we have processes running on that bronze storage, moving it from raw data to silver as tables, and then another process that where we go and get our processes running and convert to the aggregates that we are looking for, that we would have the insights for this price and location. Same technique is used for training models on the machine learning side or the AI side, and so forth. However, the question comes again. So is there anything still that we can do in there to stop actually copying data altogether from the operational side? And that's where the event streaming pipelines really come handy. So if you remember when we talked about event streaming, we were talking about that having the ability in there that to read the message more than once and do replay, having multiple consumers that being able to read the same message. So, people thought about it and they said, okay, so now if we really have the ability to get the same data and run processing on it without touching the operational database, that would be great. So we can avoid steps when it comes to this copy. We can actually even better that when we are running our processing in here, that we can skip the bronze landing and we get it directly into silver, where we would have table structure. So one of the advantage that also we have for bronze, that is the ability to reprocess the data if you have something wrong with it. Same thing that or something went wrong with a transformation process, but still you can do the same thing also with a replay on the event streaming platform right now. But if we go back to this architecture, it's not new. We talked about it that long time ago. We thought about this, but we ran into the event streaming hurdles that we just discussed. Well, guess what? There is a lot of changes happened during this time that where that landscape changed. But unfortunately, I think the stigma stayed. So I think one of the things that we are doing today by going back in the history and coming to the present time is to do like myth breaking, that where we go and we go and show that maybe this is just a negative connotation that is not there anymore. So we'll go through one by one. So if you look at event streaming, cost and the way that where we ran the licensing model in the past, now that really changed it that to became pay-per-use, and that we went really from millions or so in a year to thousands, just to show you the order of magnitude. In terms of the ecosystem and the complexity of running those platform, we went really to fully managed approach. So it's streaming as a service. This complexity is hidden and abstracted from our day-to-day operational teams. And also at the same time, those services are offered as cloud natives. I'm going to show you on the next slide, or marketplace options, right? So There's also a really extensive ecosystem built, as I'm going to show you in the demo, around the connectors. There is one for the operational side and the analytics side. There is one that also for the software development side and the software developers or the data engineers in that space. So it's covering the sphere around event streaming. And although that in terms of the resources and the people and working with the people and the assets in that space, that also changed a little bit. So with all this abstraction that we built on top of event streaming, the barrier to entry where people that will be able to pick up this is really lowered, right? So even though maybe it's still not that something that where you can find a lot of resources or commodity, but still at the same time that there is a more and more people from the data engineering side that getting into that space right now. So as you can see, for those or almost of those items are gone, but I guess that the stigma or the negative connotation is still in there somehow. If you look at uh, the ecosystem that we talked about in terms of the platforms, there's many platforms that actually came into picture right now, um, especially also in the cloud, as we talked about. So the three major vendors in there on the cloud side that they have their own event streaming capabilities that built in, like on AWS that you have Kinesis and you have MSK on Azure, they would Event Hub and also pops up along with other capabilities that, on for instance, on the Google side. But also we have a marketplace, a native marketplace, like for instance, Confluent Cloud, which is the platform that I'm going to use for the demo today. And for the event stream processing, as we saw in the previous slide and the architectural slide, that it's a major component of that ecosystem. So the more abstraction you have in there, the better. So it's not just having ability to use Flink or Spark, but also vendors that started to come in like Databricks, and they provide out of the box connection to the event streaming world using Delta Life tables, for instance, as an abstraction layer, or DLTs. And there's other spaces that where that ecosystem actually grew. So we have the connectivity part with the connectors. We have the change data capture. We have the real-time data stores that also within this growing ecosystem. And now it's really huge. So what's happening in the future. This is something also would like to cover where the event streaming that where it's going to go from here and the future use cases. So I'm going to talk in details about a use case that where we see a lot right now, that we're combining the power of Gen AI with real-time context. And this is really providing the ability to not just be able to use historical data on the training side, but also to provide real-time information. As I'm gonna show you on that use case, that will become very powerful combination for our clients and customers in there. We see a lot of data mesh, like data democratization coming our way. So we see a lot happening that with event stream or events as a product of the data product, whether it's on the API side or on the data side. So we can see that the governance that coming from the enterprise data architecture side that actually coming to the event streaming. So through the demo, I'm going to show you how we're using schema, a reusable schema or message templates to and message template validation to enforce quality, reusability, and event and data sharing. And you can actually have right now end-to-end enterprise data governance that would encompass not just your data bits and your data catalog and your metadata, but also the events coming in, the changes to your entity as part of this end-to-end data governance. So if we go and talk about this use case, when you combine the real-time information capabilities with Gen AI. If you think that about this use case that we have a banking application, and within the banking application, that you have the ability to go, as many of us would do, through your transaction. And if you notice a root transaction or a risky transaction that you're not familiar with, you can mark it, and then that would trigger a process where someone from the fraud detection, or someone from that side, from the bank, that will start a process, will trigger a process and reach out to you and validate what's going on there, make sure that you are safe on that front. So imagine that a client actually, banking client, that flagged the transaction in there, and they would expect a call back or a certain communication back, uh, and they got anxious and still went in the chat, because that's most of us would do right now, and they want to start chatting with an account representative, and that will be able to get more information from them. Maybe we should lock access and things like that. So most of the time, that naturally we tend to train our chatbots to go and use upselling commercial access. You don't want the client to go in there and start the chat, and on the chat that you start prompting to buy things while they are really concerned about that transaction. So this is what happened on the left side. Imagine on the right hand side that actually that you have a 360 customer profile, and whenever something like that happens, the 360 get an event near real time, and this is something logged into it. And if we have orchestration where we have a service on abstracting the chatbot backend, and that service would look into if there's any new events coming in through the customer 360 that I should be aware of before I forward them to, or send them to directly to the chat. So in this situation, we would see something in there related to flag transaction. You would do prompt engineering related to flag transaction. Also, at the same time, that you can ask them on the spot, they would like to connect to a real life person, and will take the anxiety out of them, and will be really a powerful customer satisfaction use case that we see happening a lot right now. So, having covered that and showed you a little bit of the future, I'll go and do a quick demo to show you two aspects that we talked about, that when it comes to uh, the power coming into the event streaming world, that on the ecosystem that we talked about and the expansion that we had in there, and the other one that related to the governance aspect of it. So through the demo, I will just go and stop my cam for a second, just because the demo takes some of my CPU when I run it, and I don't want this to impact the demo or your experience with the video quality. So and basically that we are going to use the Confluent platform or Confluent Cloud for this demo, because they actually have brought in a lot of the features that we talked about when it comes to the ecosystem and of the governance side. So if I go here, so basically in that platform, that you'll be able to manage your topics and the schemas. We call them schema, or the contract that associated with your topic. And you'll be able also to manage the clients. So if I go and create topics in here, which will carry really the message and the events that I want to pass to my microservices, or at the same time that I want the analytics, as we talked about, the architecture to dip into it and use it, I go and create a topic for it. And basically, that topic that would be attached to what we call that schema or the contract, and the contract that, as you can see in here, that we are trying to cover the order, And we have certain bits in here that we can filter out on the analytics side, maybe would be useful to the microservices, of course, on the operational side. So that contract in here that we have a lot of ways that where we can go and enforce the validation for. Now, when we build the validation, the ecosystem that we talked about before in terms of the group of the clients that um, will be connected to this, we can actually monitor those clients, and we can monitor the stream lineage that happened with those, as I'm going to show you in a minute. And when it comes to building new clients in there, it's really easy to do. You can pick any of those. You go through the wizard. It will give you a lot of the information steps that you need, and even that when you go, of course, we're not showing the configuration because it has secret keys and API keys. So we go in there that then we take this configuration as is, removes a lot of the boilerplate that we talked about before, and they can easily come in here and build a simple Spring Boot, for instance, application, or it can go to Databricks and connect the DLT tables. And as you can see that they actually, within this model that they have in here with Java or Python, they can go and build a producer for the messages and very easily, with few lines of code. And the consumers, they can also mix from different approaches. They can use Spring Boot installation and or abstraction, or I can use direct calls from the Kafka side, and we can build the Spring REST application on top of it, so you can just easily go and fire my request in here to publish few messages, and those messages, supposed to go in here also and see all this logged that the message actually were received. If I go in here to my stream lineage, that actually supposed to be refreshed in a little bit in here, that where it goes and show where the data is coming from and how it's going to be consumed. We have one consumer group in here, for instance, going to microservices. We have one consumer group for the same data actually going to the analytics. And also, if I come here and try to look into a data portal, and that data portal that actually giving us the ability to look for the schemas and contract and do discovery. So if we have a schema that already created for customer, I don't want to create the schema twice. I can find it in here and reuse it. And if I select one of those topics that I can see in here, I can see the message that coming in as a sample for it. I can see the contract that I have. I can see the stream lineage that we talked about, and of course it provides other aspects on top of that. And in terms of the ecosystem that we talked about before, where we have also out of the box connectors that you can use in here, you can actually go and build connectors in there that from a lot of the pieces that on the data or the day-to-day that we use in there. And you can use the wizard to to quickly connect to those, as I mentioned before. And this is, will really provide fast time to market in both the ecosystem and the connections, and on the governance side in terms of the data portal that we showed in there, and the stream governance package that we showed in there on the schema side, and all those aspects covered in here in one space. So all those hurdles that we're talking about in the presentation that we discussed, that where we go and only say that we will use real-time streaming data pipeline just if you need real-time analytics, that really it went away because of all the features that we can see within bring it back in here to this architecture in here. So that's the crux of it, the core of it. And basically, if you have the opportunity to skip some of those steps that we talked about in here and being able to provide this data in real time when you have the data sharing requirements come in, when your window comes smaller on the processing, when you don't have really to talk to the producer more than once because the data producer and data owner, they don't have to build, continue to build integration point-to-point pipeline. This is something that where you can just search for the contract or the schema on the data portal, try to find out that if this event exists, does the event type on this entity exist, then I can reuse it. It becomes just a matter of requesting permission to access this topic, and so forth. And that remove the dependency on completely on the operational DB. We're not touching it in any way, but still getting the same data that we want into the OLAP environment. So this is a situation that where you go and really find out, as I talked about it, what's the best tool for the job. Streaming pipeline give you a lot of capabilities and power right now, where you can do a lot of the things that required for now and the future, and the data sharing and data democratization and data mesh, uh, reusable, rediscoverable events, and so forth. So I will pause in here for a second, and I think we are good on the time. I'll go and check with Alex and see that if we have questions on the chat window.
Yeah, we have several questions. Actually, your presentation is very detailed, and yeah, part of questions have already been covered, like in your presentation. Yeah, once I receive it, you give an answer. Yeah, so let's check several. Yeah. What's your impression about WarpStream as a competitor or replacement of Kafka?
So we have a lot of event streaming capabilities, as I talked about within the ecosystem. When it comes to the vendor selection process, is not just technical aspects and throughput that you would look into, but now we, as architect, we have to look into things from a business perspective also. So if the requirements coming to me that we would have continuity or the maturity of the ecosystem, that's a factor. If we have something that coming in that where I would need enterprise support and running something that mission critical, it's a factor. So it is not anymore about that where we actually only compare technical aspects, but also as enterprise and solution architects that we have to look into business aspects associated with the platform, that see that if it's going to fit well into the environment and the enterprise that we are using into, and so forth.
So you mean that yeah, there are different aspects and technical aspects that should be taken into account while choosing some solution. Yeah, but
Correct.
yeah, but for example, for developers, for engineers, it gives like a very wide list of technologies that they have to learn, and maybe aware of. So yeah, you told that okay, we can use
So
anything. Yeah, but
yeah, so that's actually a different, very good point. That's a different question when it comes to the learning aspect of it and the market demand when it
yeah,
when it
yeah.
comes to that, and also when we are talking about what fits into the client or the enterprise environment. So on the learning side, I can see a lot of the vendors right now, for instance, that they adapt the Kafka APIs because it's a de facto standard. So if you learn the APIs as at least at one point, this is an entry point, and then you would learn the mechanics happen behind the API. So there's all things that you need to look into, like for instance, failure and error recovery, all the other aspects that we talked about in terms of the operational side, like what happened to duplicate messages, idempotency, and what happens, with not just the operation aspect, but when we build our code and how much abstraction that we have in there when it comes to interacting with areas like not just error recovery, but also having the ability to one of the things that we see in there that is to deal with different semantics, exact ones or exactly ones, and so forth. So I would take steps that based on, like in my learning experience, step by step based on how far that you want to go. But I would go with API first, and then after that I go with the mechanics that happens behind the APIs.
Okay, I got it. And what's the best reporting tool for the real-time data visualization, in your opinion?
So we see a lot of things that when it comes to we have the traditional ones with Power BI or Tableau push models that where the data goes to the dashboard. But we actually see that a lot of people right now that building their own custom widgets, and we see also the vendors that accommodating custom widgets, where we actually use reactive approach. That where we use observability model, and there that where that we have the data pushed back to those widgets and so forth. So aside from those mainstreams ones that we see custom solution going in that space right now.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and also you mentioned that it's hard to find materials to learn about event streaming, but maybe you can recommend something? Or
Yeah, I I know that goes back into the Kafka and the APIs, but I think that like if you sign up in here, for instance, and you look into the learn um, side, that you'll find a lot of things that mentioned in there that not just related to the event streaming, but the ecosystem surrounding it. There is, I think, that also a developer portal on the Confluent side and training portal on the Confluent side. There is, if you are on the Python side, for instance, or the data break side, or I would actually go and seek the things that where it's widely available. As you can see like this, a lot of vendors started actually to offer a detailed training and material that we didn't have in the past. It just takes some digging, but I would start using the portals. I think this is a very powerful tool. Vendors started working on this right now and sharing it with the community.
okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Mark, for your presentation. And I think that concludes our session. So thank you very much all for joining us today. We hope you found this session insightful and inspiring. And in the video description below, you will find the link to the talk page where you can provide your feedback for the talk, give speaker a badge, and rate the session if you like or if you don't like it. Your feedback helps us to improve our future events and recognize the hard work of our speaker. Additionally, if you'd like to revisit it, watch it again, or download the presentation, so you can do it on the talk page. Check the video description below. Thank you very much, Mark, for coming today. We could not do it without you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Have a great day all.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. Bye.